Even ICE and Border Patrol are calling Kristi Noem a liar in public. Let me repeat that. Kristi Noem, who runs the Department of Homeland Security, is being called a liar by ICE and Border Patrol. Wow. So what's happening here is that Kristi Noem, back on January 15th, she adopted what some ICE agents said at the time, which apparently was not investigated, that these migrants lured ICE agents out and started beating them with shovels after a car chase transpired, and that ICE was under attack, and that these agents were almost killed. Like, you remember when that was right around the murder of Renee Nicole Good and right before the death of Alex Preddy, and this event was used to kind of say, look, this is why we need to bring in more people from Operation Surge. And Kristi Noem made TV appearances, and they showed the photos of migrants and said, these people are basically terrorists and they tried to kill our ICE agents. Well, now even the head of ICE, Todd Lyons, the acting head of ICE, is saying that didn't happen. It's actually January 14th. She went on air January 15th. And Todd Lyons says that the two officers involved in the January 14th chase shooting incident appear to have lied under oath and are being investigated by the Department of Justice. This comes after Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended them as firing in self-defense. Here's the statement from the acting head of ICE right now. Today, a joint review by ICE and the Department of Justice, video evidence, has revealed that sworn testimony provided by two separate officers appears to have made untruthful statements. Both officers have been immediately placed on administrative leave pending the completion of a thorough internal investigation. Lying under oath is a serious federal offense. The U.S. Attorney's Office is actively investigating these false statements. Upon the conclusion of the investigation, the officers may face termination of employment as well as potential criminal prosecution. The men and women of ICE are blah, 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 and, entrusted. Okay, you're a bunch of terrorists and Gestapo and SS, in my opinion. But remember how Fox was reporting it then? Attempted murder. An ICE officer is fighting for his life after he was allegedly ambushed with a shovel and a broom handle by 3 illegal immigrants during a traffic stop that quickly spiraled into a foot chase, a violent struggle, and gunfire. Remember that? All of that was false. All of it was false. What ended up happening was the DOJ charged 2 of the immigrants. And then those 2 immigrants started saying, this is all a lie. So then what happened? Then Trump's Gestapo tried to deport the eyewitnesses. And so that there would be no witnesses in the case where they were trying to frame the immigrants who were being claimed to be terrorists. But the immigrants hired a lawyer who then filed an action in federal court and got an injunction by a federal judge to block the deportation of material witnesses because the Trump regime tried to get all of the witnesses deported immediately to cover this up. Finally, when a federal judge ruled that the witnesses get to stay here in this country because they're material witnesses and they can't be deported, that's when the story all of a sudden changed. Let me remind you what Kristi Noem said when she went on Fox the day after this. And by the way, a modicum of due diligence would have said this didn't happen. And in any event, why, in any normal situation, you would just say, you know what, the facts are being gathered and we're not going to comment any further. And you leave it at that. That's what you're supposed to do. But as we saw with Alex Preddy, where she called him a domestic terrorist, and Renee Nicole Good, this is what this regime does. They lie about everything. And just think about the millions of other lies that don't get caught. Fortunately, this one got caught with good lawyering, with eyewitnesses, with video. But here's what Noem said. Let's play it.
What more can you add from this incident last night? Well, our agents were out doing what they're doing every single day across this country, is they were doing targeted enforcement, going after individuals that are breaking federal law. When this individual drove away, crashed his car, tried to run into a home, and as they were wrestling on the ground trying to detain this individual, two other men came out of that building and started attacking him with weapons and shovels and brooms. And as it was 3-on-1, the agent feared for his life and defensively had to take action. But, this kind of violence is perpetuated by what we hear the governor saying, what we hear the mayor in Minneapolis saying, and their irresponsibility is extremely reckless. Governor Tim Walz has my phone number. I have called him and talked to him and said, listen, you let your city burn down in 2020. Don't do it again.
I want to bring on Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Now, Harry, we have the acting head of ICE now saying that this was all a lie. We just played the clip of Kristi Noem saying the lie. She ratified it on camera. This wasn't like all of a sudden they said, let's do the good thing. It was they tried to deport all of the witnesses as well. The witnesses were then attacked with deportation. That got blocked. The body cam and the other video footage was identified. All of this was not body cam. There's other video footage in the area. And that was determined this was all a lie. And here we are right now. And by the way, Harry, I think that if they didn't murder Alex Pretty and the attention wasn't focused now on Minnesota the way it was, this is something that would have been swept under the rug. But now also with all these Minnesota prosecutors resigning and all of the pressure there, they tried their darndest to cover this up, but they couldn't.
100%. Imagine, Ben, a world without video or without the dozens of video, which are as a big part of what the protesters are doing in the street to chronicle it. This is so far upriver from any normal government and Department of Justice. Typically, they'd go forward, say things, maybe you'd have to probe, et cetera. But the reflexiveness of the complete absolute fiction. And then don't you love that extra little step of, as she did on Fox, as she did on her statement, blaming it all, the it, of course, being complete fiction, on Walz and on the governor of Minnesota. So just making it into a political football. This is straight out of the playbook of totalitarian societies. This is what George Orwell and Hannah Arendt have told us about, the absolute aggressive move to control a narrative without any regard to what the facts are. You're very well taken to include the Renee Good shooting here, because again, right out of the box with no facts at all. By the way, what you say is exactly right, because you're not supposed to, if you're in law enforcement, you don't want to prejudice a case, which they just do every day by coming out of the box and saying, oh, it was a terrorist, or these are the things that happen. It also, I have to say, encourages, more than encourages, basically has the wink and a nod, and not such a wink, to ICE and CBP to say, don't worry, you lie, we'll lie too, we've got your back. Whatever kind of nice noises, and there aren't even very many of those, we make in the public realm, you go on and be as savage and nasty as you like, aggressive, go after people with no provocation, etc., and we'll back you up. How? By lying about it. That is the most, that's a matter of complete indifference to this administration. There's really no doubt. We talk about comparing, Reconstruction, Jacksonian democracy. We've never had an administration that's just there. It is exactly like Soviet Russia or Russia or Hungary. The immediate words out of their mouth are going to be completely designed for political reasons, and there's just no regard for the truth. To not this is a cabinet official, right? A national person, to not have her at least make a phone call. Is this going to hold up or whatever? And you got to think in a way it comes from the top, and the most obviously promiscuous liar in presidential history. Because typically somebody being found out like this, you go on, you make a big deal, and it's all complete bullshit. That would not be countenanced in a normal government because it so undermines credibility. That just doesn't matter to these guys, and who, and we're not talking about degraded democracies or, the government past events where they've sort of shaded the truth. It's just flat out lying and just completely altering the narrative. It is a straightforward Orwellian authoritarian technique, and it comes from the top, and the top on down loves it. And I just want to emphasize again, you have these goons out there doing all kinds of stuff, and I think it's because they really know, the president will lie for me, Kristi Noem will lie for me, it's all going to be okay, guys.
Harry, and think about not just this incident. You think about, when we talk about Alex Pretty, when we talk about Renee Nicole Good, there's a playbook here that they use every time. Yeah, every one of these things, and then go to Miramar Martinez in Chicago. Same thing. They said when she was shot 5 times that she did it. There's literally a playbook that they're using, that when they go and they do these things, they come up with their fate every time. It's like every one. And every one of their stories an outrageous lie. And it's not a DOJ, it's not an ICE or Border Patrol thing, but even look at what the DOD, Department of Defense, did, where they shot John Birch.
It's an administration-wide thing, right? And I want to make, I'm sorry, go. Well, just another point. As you say, there's so many others. Look, you're talking about episodes in which there were deaths, and they should try to get their stories straight. We've had, I think it happens dozens of times. They'll just take in anyone they want. Did you see the video just a couple days ago? A woman is taping peacefully, and the ICE goon is in her face saying, just try me, I'll arrest you. I think it happens again and again and again. They arrest people, and because they're the ones who aggress, and they charge them with some kind of obstruction offense. And then they just drop it, right? They do the aggressing, they pull them out, and then how convenient, we'll charge you with an offense, and okay, we'll let it go. So that's the standard playbook at many levels below, but it's as a matter of rank in justice. Government dishonesty, guaranteeing of no accountability, false arrests of people doing peaceful First Amendment activity, and they just basically immediately get them in the grips, in the handcuffs, if you will, of potential federal criminal charges, and they've got all the leverage. And once they dismiss, it's the very rare person who then tries to make a big thing about it. And by the way, the big episodes we've seen have a lot of video. If they don't, you're just screwed because you know what happened. They know. But you're not going to be able to prove it.
Got to give a shout out to Abrego Garcia. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because when Abrego Garcia fought back months and months and months and months ago at every step of the process, and when he was extorted into even taking deals originally, which is just admit that you committed crimes, and we'll send you to Costa Rica. And he said, I'm not going to admit I did any crimes, but I'll go to Costa Rica. I'll be deported there. I'm just not going to admit that I engaged in any of the conduct that you're saying. I'm not going to say I was a gang member. And he fought and he stood. That was a hard thing to do. And people give him credit for that case, but he deserves to get a more historically rooted credit, because I think him pushing back and showing that if he can do it, others can do it. And I think that him showing all the lies, and remember they said, it says MS-13 on the knuckles, all that stuff they threw at him. Abrego beat Trump. Abrego has been beating the DOJ. And to me, that sent a message to everybody out there. You can do this too. You just got to hang in there. It's not going to be easy, but you'll win. What do you make of it, Harry?
Yeah, it's a great example, Ben, because remember, at the time, beginning the Trump 2.0, the DOJ enjoyed great credibility and an absolute presumption of regularity that's been tossed out the window. But Abrego Garcia comes before Judge Boasberg, who is still unwinding this case and still going to I think, keep the DOJ's feet to the fire for the consequences of what they did then that included misleading the court. But he said it in a nice way, like, oh, maybe, if you look at his rhetoric from March of 2024, it was what was then conventional in a system where you just assume, of course, DOJ isn't frankly lying to you. Flash forward to where we are now, and we've had decision after decision after decision just calling out the DOJ for the rank liars and scofflaws that they are. So that was the first inroad into the presumption of regularity, which has now been completely demolished. That's not entirely a good thing, right? The day will come again where a DOJ is righteous and you'll want to restore it, but it'll take the work of years, if not more, after all that's happened. But you're really right to note this was the first inkling when judges began to say, maybe these guys are not on the square as I've always assumed they are. And the downward spiral from there has been dramatic.
Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, and the Talking Feds Substack. Subscribe to all of them. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
Everybody hit subscribe here. Let's get to 6 million subscribers. Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.